Okay, so I'm gonna kind of try to do this all in one go. I, again, obviously have no idea what I'm doing. I do have a little cheat sheet here so that I can keep my thoughts in order. But today we are going to talk about the first of many parts to a giant Zelda theory that I have been working on for a while. Like I said, I do have this little cheat sheet here. I don't want to get off track too much. Kind of want to hit some points in this specific video, and then we'll kind of be growing on it from here on out. What you're looking at right here is actually the known timeline. And this is what I want to start, because I feel like there's a couple misconceptions about how this actually plays out. It's not so much the fault of the people that made it, it's so much the way that we interpret it. Obviously, at the end, there are 3 separate timelines. I feel like we have a little bit of an issue on why it all splits and where it's going. So let's go over that. The first, we know that it was, like I said, forked into 3 different paths. We think that it was forked due to the time jumps. You know, we're apparently working on like Avengers rules or something. And because of that, it created multiple Triforces, you know, in each timeline. I think that's kind of where the first fundamental error is with that theory. I don't think so much as there was 3 separate timelines with 3 separate Triforces, so much as we split the Triforce into 3 different times. And they actually kind of go over this. The Triforce is kind of like what holds reality essentially together. So I believe the first thing that we need to visit is right here in the timeline, where technically the Triforce of Courage went back, thus removing it from the future's timeline. The only thing that I think the Triforce could do then to balance itself was to then split itself into 2 more timelines, thus creating the 3. It's a very interesting concept, but I think this is wrong. I'm going to overlay what I think is the correct version of events, so maybe it'll clear some stuff up. But as you notice, each path seems to actually take on its form from a piece of the Triforce. You have the child timeline, you have the adult timeline, and you have the evil timeline, so to speak. And each one of them is kind of represented by like the owl for wisdom, you know, courage, and of course power. And the defeated timeline, it's all about, you know, him repeatedly trying to gain power and the power struggles. And Wind Waker and everything, you know, we go through this adventure of us reclaiming the wisdom, you know, Triforce, and putting it back together and everything. That's one of the actual big stories in it. And the child timeline, we have to go to a new world and find our courage and come back, and, you know, the future kid, you know, has to fight this evil person. And it kind of has a pattern in each of them. And essentially what I believe happened when that timeline happened, that timeline split happened, so to speak, is actually the Triforce splitting its essence into 3 timelines to maintain the balance. And that's going to be important later on. I think that's kind of a huge portion of what we maybe are misconstruing with the whole timeline, Breath of the Wild and Breath of the Wild 2. But I can't wait to get to that. Like I said, these are just kind of be mini micro videos, just kind of explaining it as we go. I don't want there to be too much information that it might, you know, distract from the meeting and the point of it. So thank you for listening, and I'll check with you next time. Okay, so this overlay wasn't as good as I remember it. Um, so I'm going to try to break this down. Obviously, there's not too much change from the other one. And now that I'm looking at it, 6, 8 months later, it doesn't relay what I was trying to say as much as I hoped it does. So to kind of break it down, essentially, it's this branch that is most confusing because this didn't actually happen before all of this. This branch is actually caused because of this branch right here. Let me try to explain this another way. When the Triforce of Courage went back in time, it thus created a future where the hero tried to stop Ganondorf but did not have the Triforce of Courage and was defeated. So this timeline could not exist without this timeline, as well as technically this timeline wouldn't be possible again without this timeline, because it doesn't matter how many times he goes back, he's always going back to the same time. So that's why I did kind of leave them separated, because they technically are different events. They do both stem from what I believe would be the normal timeline, and obviously is the normal timeline because it's the child timeline, or the timeline where time didn't get skipped, or the timeline of courage, where he had to have the courage to go back to being a child after, everything in life happening to him, and in this line he had to be wise enough to make the decisions that they made and everything. And in this timeline, power was just constantly a struggle for everybody involved, including the royal family. So these are the three timelines, at least in my eyes. Again, this is just a theoretical theory. Yeah, I think this is something, and I can't wait to explore it more with you guys. Anyways, thank you for sticking around, and I'll talk to you soon.